Welcome back to Socials Podcast. My name is Rob.
I'm Gabe.
And we're here to talk about marijuana. Cannabis.
Yep. Episode 6 now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this episode, I feel like we wanted to take a step back and just solely focus on deriving, the cannabis family. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of documentaries out there on Netflix that I've learned from, and also research out there. So we wanted to dive into it and see. And, honestly, I was confused heading into this. I've heard that why don't we just get right into it, Robert? Let's do this.
Yeah. Okay. So, to preface a little bit, it's going to be confusing right off the bat. Tell you that it's going to be confusing. So pay close attention because a lot of the words that we'll be using are the same words that we use to describe other things. I think that it'll just be a little off.
Yeah, well, let's just get right into it. So the terminology of Indica versus Sativa as a strain, I've heard talk, I've seen a documentary on Netflix saying that it's actually a myth in the sense of the stigma of Indica being more of a body high and makes you feel sleepy, and Sativa being more of a head high, uplifting and creates creativity. I've heard that those are actually myths, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we should sort of explain the terminology of cannabis is a family, right? Like it's a plant.
Yeah, cannabis is a plant, but there's a lot of different types of cannabis. The cannabis plant, right? So think about what's another type of plant, like corn. There's a lot of, I don't know if that's the best example because a lot of people think corn is corn,
right?
But there's a lot of different types of corn, right? The corn that you make popcorn out of isn't the same that you make like
corn on the cob with,
corn on the cob with, or something like that. Maybe we should have thought of a better example,
right? Yeah, but what we're trying to say is like
tomatoes. Think of tomatoes, right? You got your big tomatoes, you got your little tomatoes, right? There are different types of tomatoes, different types of grapes. You got or think about dogs.
Oh, that's a good one.
Think about like a Great Dane versus like a Chihuahua. They're like very different, right? And then so that's kind of the same way that cannabis is there's different breeds of it. That's a better way to put it.
There's
breeds of it.
Cannabis Indica.
Mm-hmm.
There's Cannabis Sativa.
Yeah, those are the two main ones. I believe that there's more, but for the purposes of like what we're talking about today, and for the purposes of most discussion, it's Indica and Sativa. Cannabis Indica, Cannabis Sativa.
As plants, not necessarily as strains. And that's sort of what I got confused with, is because I'm used to, when I go into a dispensary or a clinic and I walk in, they say Indica or Sativa or hybrid. And those are strain types.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're talking about here is different. So what we're trying to say is Cannabis Indica is typically what we smoke, what we, wax pens, the flower in which we consume and we get high with or inspired, shout out Inspired by Cannabis, man. I was with them at an event the other day. But yeah, so, and then hemp, hemp is a whole nother industry on its own. That is technically then Cannabis Sativa, right?
Right.
Okay. So, and I know hemp is known for its low levels of THC. They just passed the farm bill that now legally you can sell hemp as long as the THC levels are less than 0.3%. Right?
Yeah. And that was December of last year, 2018.
Okay.
I believe that passed.
Okay. So now that's technically hemp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cannabis Sativa, Cannabis Indica would be, our weed, marijuana stuff that we smoke or we use typically for recreational use. That's what I use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it's very important to keep in mind that they're not interchangeable, right? Because they're different breeds. You're not going to look at, a Great Dane and be like, oh, it's such a cute Chihuahua, right?
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind too, is that marijuana, weed, the thing that has that negative stigma and that people are, really fighting to legalize and whatnot, that's Cannabis Indica. Cannabis Sativa is the hemp, the thing that was just federally legalized that we can start farming now and start using more because it was already present and being used. We just have to import it from China and that kind of stuff. But now we can farm it.
Hemp is a great material to use too. I know that you can use it for all sorts of things. I've heard on my studies of you can use it in rope, clothing, body lotion, soap, I've even heard of a hemp plane one time in an article. I forgot, I should pull it up, but
Yeah.
I heard that it's like really strong material, right?
Yeah. It has like as far as like clothing is concerned, like compared to cotton, it's like 3 times stronger than cotton. It has 3 times the tensile strength as cotton. But going back to what you said about hemp being super versatile, hemp has the saying is that it's the plant of 50,000 uses or something like that, because you can use it 50,000 different ways. And I saw like this little documentary that actually Patagonia put out, because they're making hemp clothing. That one of the I think he was a cultivator for hemp. He said, "Oh, 50,000 is a little high. Maybe like 25,000 uses."
Oh my gosh!
But that's what's crazy about like that we had outlawed hemp because we were outlawing like weed.
Yeah, marijuana.
Right?
That was in the 70s with the whole war on drugs.
We were
even before that, actually.
Before that, yeah. So there was, we're going to get rid of anything that you can, smoke, cannabis indica, and we're going to get rid of cannabis sativa as well, the hemp, because they look the same. They're kind of related. Cannabis is cannabis, right? So they needed to outlaw everything to like try to like reduce the amount of confusion or whatever. And then like later down the line, it's just created more confusion, I think.
Yeah, and I was confused. Like I said, still I'm not as confused anymore now that we talked about it, but sort of taking the old habits of thinking indica and sativa are strain types and implementing it and saying they're actually different.
More like breeds, right?
Yeah.
Instead of strains, they're breeds.
Mm-hmm. And each breed or each strain has different characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of like going into our next thing is sort of THC versus CBD, because based off of those two components, I feel like that's what really alters those characteristics.
Yeah.
Especially in like, I like to personally take sativa strain types because it helps me become more creative and uplifting, and it honestly helps me become more social and talking to people. It makes me feel more talkative and inspired. But at the same time, it's hard to realize that like it's not because it's a sativa strain, it's because of the components and percentages of THC versus CBD. Yeah. That's what's really like blowing my mind right now,
Yeah, no, like when I first started like trying to figure out, okay, indica, sativa, THC, CBD, what's the differences of each one? And then when I initially started looking into hemp, they kept calling it cannabis sativa. And I was like, well, how is it sativa? How is it a sativa strain when like federally it's legalized now, but why are we having like issues with it being, with weed being illegal? And so realizing that like the strain types, like, oh, do you want indica? Do you want a sativa? Do you want a hybrid? Realizing that that's just like more or less kind of made up.
Right? It's like, it's crazy. And so many different dispensaries, or so many people are used to this, and like me being used to it too, used to using that terminology, and to now have to realize that that's not what it is. It's weird. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm kind of glad I know, because as long as we know and we educate and we try and, that's just one more way we're going to help bridge this gap between people who do smoke and people who don't, sort of promoting education. And so I know that both THC and CBD have huge medical benefits, regardless of if it's cannabis sativa, cannabis indica. But I think that, right now CBD as a market and as an industry is really big. A lot of companies are going into CBD. And I was on Instagram and I noticed that Tom Hanks, famous actor Tom Hanks.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, he just said that it was a quote saying that he was tired of painkillers, and so he said he'd give CBD a try. And the fact that you have people who are willing to try CBD, I feel like they're trying because they don't want the psychoactive effects of THC, like you were mentioning, of anxiety and paranoia, and also the spacey thinking, sort of like when I'm like stuck, or if I'm daydreaming in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people don't want to feel that effect, so they strictly do CBD.
Yeah.
And I feel like that it's confusing to me, especially with the idea of drug testing. You know, if I take a drug test for a job, let's say I only do CBD, are the companies technically looking for THC only? Or are they looking for any sort of cannabinoid components? You know what I mean? Because I've heard talk that companies are only looking for THC in it. So it's like, oh, maybe if I try CBD, then I won't get tested positive. But then I've heard talk, it depends on the THC percentages you're consuming. And I think that once we get more into the percentages and how that balances our effects, then we'll start to realize like, wow, now people are going to believe that everything in the past isn't what it was.
Yeah. I think that with legalization, I think that like we've reached like kind of a pivotal point where I don't think that like indica versus sativa, when describing strains, I don't think that's going to go away necessarily, because I think that like that's just so ingrained, right? Like, oh, I want to like really relax, or like, you know, have like a nightcap or something like that. Well, I want like an indica.
Right.
I don't think like that kind of stuff is going to go away. But now with legalization, where everything has to be lab tested, where you see the percentages of like how much THC is in this, how much CBD is in it, right? Like what's the ratio between the two? I think that that's going to start to determine a lot more of like people's decisions, as opposed to like, oh, I like this particular strain because it gives me this particular like feeling, right? And because you can very easily like regulate the amount of like the percentages, the THC, the CBD within a particular product, but like it's pretty inconsistent when you're looking at like strain types, right? Like if you're having like Blue Dream, Sour Diesel, you know, whatever it is that you're having, like it can be pretty inconsistent when you're looking at, you know, different growers, different conditions. It could be the same grower, different conditions, you know, throughout the year and all that kind of stuff. Regionally, a strain is going to be completely different, I think at least.
Yeah, no, I think so too.
In like its THC and CBD content and that ratio as well. And that's why
it's sort of like growing food in different geographic bases, right? It's like growing food in NorCal versus SoCal. Like if you're growing oranges, they're going to taste differently because of the conditions they were put through, right? So it's sort of like when you go to dispensary A and you get Blue Dream, and you go to dispensary B and you get Blue Dream. Let's say they both have them. Are they going to taste the same? Are they going to have the same effects? You don't know. That's what's crazy about it, is like realizing that you don't know. And even the strain name that they're saying they're marketing, it could not be that strain. At the end of the day, you never know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I think, like you said, the percentages, my question to you is, do you think that the percentages of THC versus CBD are going to sort of define whether it's an indica, sativa, or hybrid? You know what I mean? Like, let's say they get more consistent on the percentages. So 75% THC and 25% CBD would be more of a indica or something, right? Is that, do you see that sort of being into effect, or?
Probably. I think because there's so much misinformation right now, as far as like, I think a lot of people understand THC, CBD, at least amongst like the active cannabis user, right?
Right.
But the indica versus sativa, and then like the associated percentages of each, I think that's kind of up in the air. Like I know for me at least, like I don't know like if it's more THC dominant versus CBD dominant.
Right.
Like, I don't know if like that describes an indica or that describes a sativa. And so I think there's gonna be a lot of like that misinformation, and it's more just like based off of like historically like what has made people feel a certain way, right? So you know that like an OG Sour Diesel, that's one I always go back to because that's like the first one I ever smoked, I think. But okay, so that's gonna put you out, right? It's super indica, whatever, right? And so people just go back to that. And so I think that bud tenders, I mean, reasonably, I don't know like how many of them are like doing their research into like saying like, oh, like indica, sativa, like it doesn't really matter. It's more like the cannabinoid contents and the ratios and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right. I don't really think that that's when lately, based off what I've heard and what I've been doing and the dispensary that I go to, I don't really see that. So I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon, or if this is going to be a bigger topic of discussion in the cannabis industry, because they're not really talking about that. I haven't heard much talk about, is it really, are indicas and sativas, are they really, is there actual difference or not? But like you said, like everybody typically in the cannabis industry knows the difference between THC and CBD. But I think one thing that really confused me was the farm bill, in the sense of hemp derived CBD versus marijuana derived CBD. And that sort of confused me, because I thought that CBD was just CBD, like it was a separate category, but in reality it's just a chemical compound. Right. And it's found in both hemp, cannabis sativa, and cannabis indica. Right. So any, like you explained it earlier today, like any sort of company that's marketing CBD infused stuff, that's more hemp derived, correct?
That will be derived. Okay. Derived, because hemp / cannabis sativa, try to think of those as the same thing, right? Yeah. Hemp, cannabis sativa, that is federally legalized. We can eat it. We can, put it into lotions. We can make our clothes out of it. We can transport it between states. We can grow it. That's everything. It's open for commerce. So anything CBD related is coming from that hemp, because hemp is going to have, 0.3% or lower THC content, right? So anything that comes out of it is going to be lacking in THC or have a very, very minuscule amount. So if they're marketing it, I'm going to say like 95% or higher, it's coming from hemp, because if they're cultivating cannabis indica, marijuana, weed, specifically for the CBD content, then that's illegal. Like, it doesn't make sense to like harvest something that has like, potentially legal ramifications when you can just grow something legally, right? So anything that's CBD infused is cannabis sativa, is hemp. And then anything that you see that's hemp related, if it's a hemp shirt, if it's I saw like hemp granola.
What?
Yeah, I've had hemp granola before.
Snap.
Yeah, it's like high in like omegas and like omega-3s and stuff like that. Yeah, like it's crazy, like the versatility of the hemp plant. But anything that you see that's like legal and is like not something that you smoke, or not something that that's like an edible to make you high, that's going to be a cannabis sativa or hemp. If it's something that you smoke, if it's something that you consume specifically to get high, then that's going to be cannabis indica, weed, marijuana. And then that may or may not be like legal depending on where you are, but federally it's illegal. So I hope that kind of
that
made sense.
Definitely clear there. Definitely. I have a quick question. So with CBD, and like I was saying, that like a lot of people in society are actually trying CBD, right? Because there's a lot of people I think there's like 1.5 billion people with chronic pain right now. Chronic pain and mental health are like the two biggest things as far as people's issues. So my question is, with more and more people trying CBD, do you think that there's going to create this audience of people who like CBD but don't like THC, or sort of don't like people who consume marijuana for the THC purposes or recreational use, I'd say?
That's hard to say, because I think it really depends like on the person, and probably like the culture they're brought up in, or the environment, or regionally like where they are, and what the thoughts are regarding that, right? We live in California, we live in Southern California, so really anybody that's trying a CBD product, maybe it's a lotion, to help chronic pain or something like that, I would give it, a fairly fairly large or fairly good shot that they're open to THC. Like, yeah, like you do you.
They're more accepting.
Don't do it around me, whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that there's still going to be that kind of divide with like, oh, you THC users,
Yeah.
like because I think that a lot of people understand like that the CBD infused stuff isn't weed, right? It's like it's different. Maybe they don't know how it's different, but it's different. So if I'm like having a CBD infused lemonade, whatever, right, or something like that, and like, oh yeah, this really helps my pain or really helps with like muscle recovery or something like that, right? There may be like, I may look at somebody who's like smoking a joint and be like, oh, I can't believe they would do that, right? Because I think that there still is a stigma against like actually smoking.
Right. And the process and the habit of it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
sort of like,
And I think that that's associated with THC, right? With like weed is like, oh, you have to smoke to consume it. Or
right.
if you're getting an edible, a lot of times that edible is to get you like really high,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that like it's more just stereotypes, right?
I
Of
think,
like abusing it to get to like that certain level that they feel is too much.
I get you. It's sort of like, people who, it's like the idea of recreational versus medicinal use,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of some people who don't have necessarily a medical reason to consume, they consume, like myself. And then you have people who go to CBD because of their medical problems or their pains that they're going through already, their health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then they are pushing, oh, okay, well, like this is an alternative than doing opioids or doing like painkillers or Advil or Tylenol.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like I also know that there's also a, an audience in the cannabis community that feel like, oh, like CBD is oh, they're just, it's like diet weed almost.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? It's sort of
Uh-huh.
as like, oh, that's not even weed.
It's not part of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like I feel like I could see on both ends of the spectrum
Mm-hmm.
sort of their, not their issues, but
Their arguments.
Yeah, their arguments.
Their perspective of
Yeah,
it.
because of a lot of people who are going into CBD originally had that stigma of, oh, I don't like weed or I don't like cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be associated with that, but yet they're trying
Right.
CBD. It's everywhere now. It's in grocery stores, but at the same time, it's like it's still considered cannabis, and I think that's what people aren't missing or aren't realizing is when you try CBD, you're trying the cannabis family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
whether that be everyone has their own reason as to why they want to smoke or why they
Mm-hmm.
want to try it or why they need to get into cannabis, and at the end of the day, I feel like we are just trying to explain that to them and explain the differences,
Mm-hmm.
so that way it'll help you realize like, okay, what could I use this for? So for like CBD,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of benefits, anywhere from asthma to anxiety to you know arthritis, anything. Like, there are so many different things. I was on cbd.how.com. That's a great website. I know the guys there. They do a lot of reviews on CBD brands,
Mm-hmm.
and that's sort of what I learned what CBD is was through them. And yeah, if you've ever up for it, if you're ever interested, look that up, man, because
What was
it's
the website again?
cbd.how. I think it's cbd.how.com. I forgot exactly what it
Okay.
was, but I was on my phone earlier. Or just look at cbd.how on Instagram. That's the best way. And then just click the link in the bio.
Okay.
Yeah, that was how I learned more about CBD because, I've tried it. I've had CBD flower. I've had CBD, like a CBD joint, CBD pens, and it's different. I've even had the coffee. I've had coffee or like agave that I've used in it, and you don't feel high. Like you don't, it's non-psychoactive. So like you don't feel that spacey thinking or anything like that. Your body feels a little tingly, and
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much it. Like I could definitely see where it helps people and where it can benefit people. Luckily, I'm healthy and I try to take care of my body somewhat. So, but everybody has their balance, and I think as long as everybody finds their balance, whether
Mm-hmm.
that be more THC or less THC or more CBD, less THC, whether it's more cannabis indica or cannabis sativa, as long as they find their balance, then more power to them,
Yeah.
whatever makes their life better and easier.
Yeah. And I think that that's I like how you kind of like went back, right, to like figuring out that balance and figuring out like um what's right for the person, because we can have somebody that does CBD in like a lotion or something like that, and that's their use of the cannabis plant, right?
Exactly.
Or somebody who's, smokes marijuana and, gets super high and all that kind of stuff. That's their use of it, right? But they're still using the cannabis plant in some form, right? We'll go back to the dog thing, right? Like somebody can have a Chihuahua and somebody can have a Great Dane, and like the Chihuahua, maybe they're living in an apartment and that's like what fits their situation, right? And then maybe the Great Dane, they need a miniature horse for something. I don't know.
Yeah, or
like,
maybe it's like
like
serves as a guard dog, or maybe it's just like some people prefer big dogs, some people
yeah,
prefer little dogs. Some people,
yeah.
it's that same mentality.
It's
It's a
like
preference.
Wow.
Okay.
Hey.
Okay.
Yeah, it's preference. It's like what you need too, right? Some people need CBD. Some people maybe they need THC.
Yeah,
Like
or they just want it, like it's the
yeah.
desire. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of people get a lot of people get upset for people who want to smoke. The idea of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you want to do that, you don't. It's sort of like choice it's like want versus need.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if I need something, maybe people won't judge me as much because, oh, I need CBD for my chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
My elbows are hurting or my ankles hurt from basketball or something.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're saying it's different when you say like, no, I enjoy smoking cannabis because this is part of my life and this is how I balance out the stress. That could be one reason alone.
Mm-hmm.
And you might get a lot of backlash from people that you don't know, like your family or
Yeah.
stuff like that they might see you differently.
Yeah. But it just, who are they to judge?
Exactly.
Right?
Like,
Who am I to judge? Like,
who cares what
how
kind
they
of
live
dog I
their
have?
life, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We're all dog owners, right?
Exactly.
So, it's just like the breed that we choose to have,
Exactly.
right? Whether it's cannabis sativa, cannabis indica, weed versus hemp. It's all cannabis.
Yeah. So I hope that
Well, I kind of sounded like you were
yeah.
starting to wrap up.
No,
but,
go ahead.
Oh, okay. I kind of want to go back to when you were talking about CBD and like, oh, you had a CBD joint.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was pretty interesting because it's CBD, right? But that's like the federally illegal kind.
Right.
Because it's something that you smoke and that it's coming from cannabis indica,
Right.
marijuana. But then the CBD coffee is something that theoretically would be legal because it comes from cannabis sativa or hemp.
I see what you're saying.
And so that's where we start to get in like that argument of legalization. Is where do we draw the line? They're both CBD products.
So is CBD technically legal or illegal, right? Like it depends where it's derived from. And that's what's kind of it's sort of like the same question, like, is cannabis legal? Well, it depends. If it's hemp, yeah, it is. But if it's not, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to come down to, like I said in the last episode, transparency in the companies. As far as showing their lab results, I know Great CBD Reviews, they're asking a lot of people for their lab results or lab reports because that's going to show them, okay, well, where is this derived from? Like you said, the percentages. I feel like that's going to be very important from here on out and going forward. Lab testing is very big now. There are a lot of lab tests. And like, it's sort of with CBD, I just don't know how you can, if it's cannabis, like you said, how it's cannabis sativa or indica, because if you could smoke it, that's technically cannabis indica, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say like an edible.
Mm-hmm.
Is that technically cannabis indica or cannabis sativa if it's a CBD edible?
Well, see, that's
you know what I mean?
Because a lot of times you're gonna get CBD edibles. I think that actually I don't know. I was going down one path. I'm like, well, wait, I don't know, because it kind of just depends on where you're getting it from. If you're getting it from the grocery store, then it's coming from hemp. It's coming from cannabis sativa. If you're getting it from maybe a back alley dispensary or something like that, then it's probably not.
Right.
It's probably cannabis indica, like marijuana.
Yeah.
But see, then like that just goes back to the argument of like, why are we banning like one form versus another?
Right.
right?
We're
Like,
legalizing, or it's sort of like we're legalizing half of the family, of
yeah,
the cannabis family,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's like,
And
okay, you legalize the half that wasn't not necessarily as important, but it wasn't like that's everyone who's trying to push legalization is talking about cannabis indica and talking about marijuana,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
And hemp was sort of like people knew what hemp was. There have been studies out for hemp.
Thousands and thousands of years,
Thousands.
people have been using hemp.
I heard that.
Did you know? Oh,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay. Did you know that like the colonies, it was mandatory that you grow hemp
I didn't know that.
because it was so essential to the economy. Because they made like sailboats, it was made out of hemp, cannabis sativa. That's how they got
Dang.
to America.
Wow. So we got here using the same stuff that we banned to this day. What's going on, man?
Yeah.
What? That's not make
Like, and there was, I read in this, it was like book of most interesting facts you like never knew or something like that. I don't remember, but it was like, oh, George Washington grew cannabis at the White House.
what?
And it was like, it blows people's mind to think like, whoa, like why is that? And then like you like think about it, and it's like, oh, it's cannabis sativa, it was the hemp. But like it's been so crucial to like our early economy. Like how did we get away from that, right?
Right.
Why is it so illegal now? And it's all like industrialization, and it's I think just like paying off lawmakers, because we could have gone with like I think it was like Henry Ford was creating vehicles, or had like prototypes or something like that of like vehicles that ran off of like hemp oil.
What?
But we have like the Rockefellers. Rockefeller was the oil, I think. But we had like oil barons and whatnot that said like, nah, like
No, because it's
like
gonna take my money
like,
from me. Yeah.
like we have the mines and we have the refineries and all that kind of stuff. Like let's make everything.
Let's just
run
burn
off
our
of
fossil
oil.
fuels and create more.
Right? Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's just create a hole in the ozone. Rather than legalize it. But
I don't think they thought that far ahead.
I'm just
I got you.
But yeah, like it's crazy to think that and the thing is like there's so many studies that have already gone out, and there's still technically not enough studies, right, about cannabis and about how beneficial it is. Like there are so many positive benefits now, to the point where I can't even like list them all, right? But yet people are still looking for more and more and more. But we're still like cannabis is still a Schedule 1 drug, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So it's
federally,
like we're not going to be able to see any push in research or studies until it's taken off as a Schedule 1. Mm-hmm. Maybe if it's Schedule 2, then it'll be open to more. And I think Joe Biden talked about that, but I mean, he's got to support the whole plant too, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But man, I just feel like I just don't know how to go about from here on out the terminology of indica and sativa as a strain, right? Because you mentioned like preferences, right? I've even heard talk of people who smoke indicas and they feel more uplifted, and indica strain type, and they feel more uplifted and creative. And I think that goes back to the preference of the person and sort of like which plant type works best for them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Then like, oh shit, I just lost my train of thought. But the idea of, I totally lost my train of thought.
I think it's the idea of the percentages of THC and CBD.
Yeah.
Like some people are going to figure, okay, what ratio works best for me, rather than like what strain type. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's just crazy. Like I'm going to walk out of here today and be like, dang, like next time I go into a dispensary, they're going to ask me and I'm going to be like, it doesn't matter. And they might think they might be mad at me.
Yeah. Because they might not know.
Yeah. Or they might be like, oh, this guy doesn't care. Like it doesn't matter. Like that's sort of standoffish. But at the same time, it's like the truth is it doesn't really matter. Like there isn't a big enough difference or variance between the two. Maybe if we did do some more studies on an indica strain and a sativa strain, and we could dive into that more, but we're not going to be able to do that anytime soon, like I said, till it's taken off as a Schedule 1 drug. But yeah, I don't know, like as of right now, it's just blown my mind, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, hold that thought because we have to take a break here for a little bit.
Oh yeah. All right. We got to take a social break. Let's run it. Hey everybody, we're back. We had to take a quick socials break, but I think Robert, you found your thought. I know you lost your train of thought earlier, right before we took a break, but yeah, I think you remember what you said now, right?
Yeah. Because we were talking about like when we're talking about strains, you go to the dispensary and it's like, oh, do you want an indica, sativa, something like that, right? We have that idea already in our head when we're purchasing or when we're getting recommended or something like that. Whereas like, oh, this is a super heavy indica, it's gonna put you into couch, like whatever, right? So when you get home and then you smoke that or however it is that you consume it, you're gonna get into couch because that's what you're expecting, right? It's like a placebo effect.
I see what you're saying.
You know, when they do like these like double blind studies, whatever, of particular drugs, and it's like, oh well, you know, people get this placebo effect where if they think that they're consuming it, then they're going to get the effect that they're expecting, right? So if it's like, oh, you're having a sativa, this is how you're going to feel. You're having an indica, this is how you're going to feel. This strain makes you feel this way, this strain makes you feel that way, right? It's not necessarily like that because it's the THC versus CBD. I think that's like what people have to push, right, to understand more.
And I think also, like you mentioned, placebo, there's even the placebo effect of whether or not you're high when you are high. Like when you smoke, people say, oh, it's just a placebo effect. It's all mental. It's in your head. And that may be true. Like there are cannabinoid receptors in your head and also in your immune system. So it's like we already have cannabinoids in our body. And when we consume, that's just sort of like our way of feeding that cannabinoid receptor.
Yeah, and I think that like you can like make yourself higher by thinking about it, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I think we've all had a situation where we like sobered up.
Yeah.
You know,
instantly.
like whether it's alcohol, whether it's cannabis indica, weed, marijuana, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a situation where you're like, oh, like whatever you're on, and then like something happens, and you're like, you're totally aware again, like you're like you're totally sobered up, and I think like that's part of it is you're kind of like in this like
it's like the state of flow of like you want to be in, like you're when you're high to a point to where you want to be high, you're in this sort of like enjoyment relaxation mode. You know what I mean? It's sort of like putting cruise control on the highway going, you know, to Palm Springs or Coachella or whatever. You know what I mean? It's a long stretch, but you're just enjoying the ride. You're not trying to get there. And then if you ever need to, you know, hop off, you know, if you see a cop for speeding or something, you instantly get out of it. So I think that we should definitely get like a study going on that or something, like, you know, like sort of handing them, you know, an indica strain type and sort of telling them, hey, this is a sativa, and see how, if they really like see how well the placebo effect works on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like that'd be something we should get going down the line or something. I don't know.
No.
Could be in the works.
That'd be interesting. We're all for, you know, tackling things very professionally and whatnot, right? What's more professional than trying to do a whole study on like whether or not people are getting, you know, placeboed by the name of the strain, right? Or how it's marketed.
Yeah, that's true.
I just wanted to, in my research, this is actually from a Leafly article. Like Cannabis 101. Yeah,
Leafly. I use them for my like, and anytime I look up a strain, I would use Leafly. So that's a very credible source.
Yeah. So I'm actually trying to find the author. Bailey Ron.
Okay. Shout out Bailey.
Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. She put together like this really like pretty thorough thing talking about like what we've been talking about: indica versus sativa, THC versus CBD, right? And how it all affects you. So, of course, now I lost my spot while I was looking for her name. But this guy, Ethan Russo, I'm still trying to find the quote. He's a neurologist that has worked specifically with cannabinoids and trying to figure out like how things affect you, right? He's a neurologist whose research in cannabis pharmacology is respected worldwide. So, I mean, just being a neurologist, that's hard to get to, right?
Right. At first I was like, dang, neurologist? What? But then now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So he's quoted on Leafly as saying, quote, "The way that sativa and indica labels are utilized in commerce is nonsense." So he feels, this, well-respected academic feels that the indica sativa labels are completely ridiculous.
Wow.
The clinical effects of the cannabis chemovar have nothing to do with whether the plant is tall and sparse versus short and bushy, or whether the leaflets are narrow or broad. So if it's cannabis indica, if it's weed/marijuana, it's all going to be the same depending on how it's bred for THC, CBD content.
I see.
So, I mean, that was pretty crazy to read, from somebody who's researched it.
Yeah, someone as well respected as that saying that, I feel like that should definitely tell you a lot, and it's just opening my eyes and making it more of a reality that, hey, you know what, an indica sativa hybrid, it might not actually matter. It's like a myth, It's crazy though, because I've been going years by hearing that. I mean, it's in movies, it's in our culture already. It's everywhere.
Absolutely.
So it's like this, even the term OGs, like OGs are known as indicas.
Mm-hmm.
Are OGs indicas? I don't know. I don't know.
Or is it just that ratio of THC and CBD that's present in OG strains that make you feel a particular way? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
dang. I guess, we'll see how it goes, from here on out. But hopefully this video helped people and educated them, and it made it more informative. Maybe I'm sure we confused a lot of people. I'm sure I'm pretty confused.
Or inspired people to do more research into what they're consuming.
And I feel like people in today's society, consumers are smart. People, whether it's cannabis or it's clothes or even online shopping, has forced us to be smart about the way in which we buy things.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So maybe this is just one more way to push it. If you want to try, educate yourself. If you do the research, if not, watch videos like us, where we kind of try to do that for you, and we try to explain it as best as we can, being in the cannabis industry. But it's very confusing. There are a lot of different opinions. There are a lot of different point of views. If anyone's willing to talk with us about it, we'd love to bring you on and conversate more about this.
Yeah, somebody who's actually an expert, not us just trying to figure out what the heck's going on.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with not necessarily knowing. The fact that we're willing to try and push and research, do it on our own. I feel like if everybody's on that board and on that mentality, it'll definitely clear the air, and it'll break down the myths and sort of pave the way for the future,
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Let's try to summarize everything.
Yeah, let's recap this thing.
We covered a lot, right? So I think that, just starting with cannabis family, right? Cannabis is a plant that there are different types of. Just like dog is a type of animal that there are different types of, right? So you have cannabis indica and cannabis sativa. Cannabis indica is what's illegal federally. It's weed, it's marijuana. It has potentially high levels of THC or CBD, or some of both, that gets you high. That's what a lot of the stereotypes are against. Cannabis sativa is hemp. You can make tons of things out of it. You make concrete out of it. You can eat it. You can oil your car, apparently.
Dang.
I don't know if you have to have a specific car that you oil it, but you can do a lot of different things with hemp. THC is very low. CBD is what's present. That's what anything that's in commerce right now, it can be transported across state lines. That's going to be what it is. When it's CBD infused, it's cannabis sativa. It's hemp.
Well,
and that's what's legal.
Dang. Well, thank you for informing us, Robert. I hope everyone that watched, that was a great recap. The best way you can explain what this video is about. And I hope everyone enjoyed watching it. For those that are curious about getting into cannabis, like we said, do your research and figure out what works best for you and what preferences you have for yourself and sort of why you want to get into it. But other than that, we'll be posting them. Our audio drops Wednesday. Our video will drop the next Monday at 4:20 on the YouTube and WeTube. And yeah, I'm Gabe.
I'm Rob.
And thanks for watching Socials Podcast.
We'll see you next time.